guys, welcome back to the Crawl Room. We're here once again in this wonderful ranting room for all things Formula 1. And unfortunately this time around it's not a Crawl Room episode and it is not going to be very ranty, sadly. This is just going to be my F1 2022 predictions. Who will be on the grid, who will be off the grid next season. There's a lot of rumours flying around while we're still during this summer period, this summer break where George Russell said, I definitely want to be in Mercedes seat confirmed by the summer break. It's not been confirmed as yet, has it? Well, at least not at the time we're recording anyway. So I'm just going to offer my opinions, reviews on where I think the drivers are going to be. It's not as exciting, it's not as spicy as what other people are going to make out. People are saying, you know, there's some ridiculous ones out there on YouTube just to get the clickbait views. You know how it goes with fucking YouTubers. But there you go anyway, this is just my personal opinion on who's going to be where and to see if you agree or disagree. There's a couple of new drivers in there, there's a couple of drivers no longer in the sport. I don't feel next season. But yeah, we'll just get into it, enjoy it, and leave your thoughts and feedback down below on who you think will be in the grid for next season. So we'll kick things off, of course, with the championship leaders at the moment, Mercedes. Just a little smidge over Red Bull, aren't they, at the moment? Exciting times ahead for the remaining races when we get to them. And yeah, I think it's, well, we know already it's Lewis Hamilton, don't we, for at least the next 2 years anyway. And I do believe George Russell will be alongside Hamilton in that Mercedes seat. Unfortunately, though, I do keep thinking every now and again, doubting me back in my mind whether Mercedes will actually go for it and go for someone to challenge Hamilton, because Bottas has been a fantastic wingman, especially in Hungary, taking out 2 Red Bulls and a McLaren. Fantastic stuff there. You know, took all the competition out for Lewis. He plays a fabulous wingman role in just getting out the way for Lewis. And then Lewis has been saying, oh, Bottas is such a great teammate in the press. So I always get that doubt in the back of my mind, but ultimately they've got to get rid of him because he is diabolical, isn't he? He is diabolical. He has been terrible this season as well. So it's got to be Russell. It has to be Russell. I think for Mercedes' future, it needs to be Russell. With the Constructors' Championship so closely fought this season, they're only thanking Bottas because he's taking out Red Bulls, as opposed to his actual pace is getting them above on points. So I think, yeah, I mean, it has to be. It just has to be. It has to be Russell. If it's Bottas again, I'm going to go down to the Mercedes factory and give them a good slap, the lot of them, because it can't be. It can't be happening. That will literally blow my mind, and I think that will piss a lot of people off. I know the sport's not about drivers and where they are, etc., but that will get the entire community raging because Bottas is wasted. Now, he's just a waste. He doesn't deserve the Mercedes seat. Anyway, that's that. Lewis Hamilton, George Russell for Mercedes next season. And then we come to Red Bull. A lot of people saying, will Perez partner Max next season or not? And I think he will. I genuinely think he will. A lot of people are talking about Gasly maybe moving up from AlphaTauri. But you've got to remember, Helmut Marko is never wrong, is it? He is never wrong. He never makes a mistake on a driver. Look at Danny Kvyat. We got rid of him. We demoted him. We brought him back. We got rid of him again. We brought him back again. Just a load of shite. But Helmut Marko's never wrong, and he will never put an experienced driver up again after he's dropped him down. I'm convinced. And he won't do it this time around either. So I think as well that, personally speaking, Sergio Perez has been solid this season. I've got to think Imola, he dropped the ball at Imola, didn't he? And in the sprint qualifying at Silverstone, which ultimately cost him that entire race weekend, there is 2 mistakes. There is 2 mistakes. Admittedly, they're both major because he didn't get points. Okay, he'd have maybe scraped a couple of points at Silverstone had they not pitted him to nick the fastest lap off of Hamilton. But yeah, they were his 2 big downfalls this season so far, but the rest of the time he has been incredibly unlucky. Of course, he got lucky with the win at Baku, let's not forget that, but he was in a position where Red Bull were comfortable 1-2. He was keeping Hamilton behind him nicely there, and Max had a failure that put Perez in the lead. So I think he's been there to pick up the pieces when it's gone wrong for Max. But yeah, I think he deserves it. I really do. I think he's done a good job in the unlucky circumstances he's had this season. I mean, we're probably looking at engine changes later on in the season for the pair of the Red Bulls as well, due to damage sustained in the first half. So I think it's going to be crucial. It is still crucial this second half of the season for Sergio. But personally speaking, based on the first few races, yeah, we've had two big Sergio moments. But considering how much and how bad Gasly did and Albon did in the previous couple of seasons, I think he's done a solid job. So if he can keep the momentum going and, you know, build on that win from Baku and build on his pace a little bit more. He has been half a second off still on Max, but that seems to be a customary with the second driver. I think he deserves to stay because we need continuity. And changing a driver every season does not offer you continuity. So I think fundamentally he'll be there. And of course Max is there for, is it 2024 or something? For now anyway. So we know Max is going to be there. So yeah, an unchanged lineup at Red Bull. It will be Max and Sergio Perez. And then we come to Ferrari, third in the standings at the moment, tied on points with McLaren, but they get it based on the second place, don't they, of Carlos Sainz. So yeah, an interesting one for Ferrari. I think they've done a fabulous job this season. I think Sainz has surprised a lot of people. A little bit off the pace at the start of the season, but has been matching Charles for quite a while. We've seen some masterful drives by Charles this season, definitely, but we've seen him drop the ball a lot more than Sainz. Sainz had the unfortunate error at Baku, didn't he, in qualifying where he crashed and a couple of other bits and pieces, but for the most part, I think both drivers have been solid. That driver lineup will remain unchanged, I feel. I think, we know, again, Leclerc's got until 2025 or whatever, and Sainz, I believe, is 2 years anyway. But yeah, we all know how contracts can go, people can get bought out, etc. But yeah, I do feel it's an unchanged lineup for next season for Ferrari. There's no need to change it. They've both done a solid job, and Sainz has been generally impressive in that Ferrari, because a lot of drivers that jump into Ferrari take a lot of time to adapt just into the Italian way of life, and we need to balls up a strategy, etc. And he's done a fantastic job for the team. So yeah, unchanged lineup at Ferrari with Leclerc and Sainz for 2022. And then we come to McLaren. A lot of people saying, will they drop Ricciardo, will they not? And ultimately they won't. They won't. He's got, again, another guy that's got a couple of year contract, and I think they're going to honour that. It is getting close though. I think if he doesn't deliver next season, could they potentially drop him halfway through next season? I think that's a strong possibility, but I think they will honour the current contract that they've got with him for a couple of years at least. And yeah, he'll be there. He'll be there next season. I hope he gets out just like Daniel Ricciardo so much. And he's such a likeable character, but he has struggled this season, hasn't he? We've seen 2 good races from him so far this year, and the rest of the time he has been miles off the pace. And of course, Monaco was the massive moment, wasn't it? Everyone was expecting Ricciardo to be good there, myself included, based on his previous track history around the circuit. Norris was P3 on the podium. Daniel Ricciardo down in P12 and getting lapped by his teammate. It was such a sad thing to see that. So yeah, I do think the driver lineup will remain unchanged. Again, Norris, a young star of the future, has got a multi-year contract with McLaren for, well, it is just multi-year, isn't it? Which means 3 or more. So he's there for the foreseeable, unless a big team wants to buy him out of that contract in later life. But it won't be coming this time around. 2022 for McLaren will remain Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo. And then we come to the Alpine team of Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. An up and down season really for the pair of them, to be honest with you. Alonso was really good at Bahrain, the first race of the season. Unfortunately had to retire during the race where points would have been possible. And then he had the few races where he just slipped away, didn't he? He was behind Ocon for a few races and really struggling. And then since France just a few races ago, he has been absolutely mega. Alonso has been brilliant. So yeah, he's done a solid job. Again, for Ocon, he started off okay-ish. He wasn't as good as Alonso at Bahrain, but then found his feet. And then since he signed a couple of year contract with Alpine, he struggled massively. And that was from France onward, wasn't it? So it was almost like as soon as Alonso got good, Ocon dropped the ball, and they couldn't really get on the same wavelength together until Hungary, because the pair of them drove superbly there. I know it was a wacky result with a P1 and a P5. I completely get it was a strange situation for him to be in, but both drivers, regardless of the overall result, drove impeccably that race. The defence that Alonso had to put up against Hamilton for the number of laps he did was sublime, and the phenomenal effort of Ocon to keep Sebastian Vettel behind was brilliant as well, you know. So they've both got to be commended for that. That's a big boost for the team going into the summer break. And again, you know, as mentioned, Ocon's got a couple of year contract, and Alonso has got next season in the bag because he re-signed for 2021, didn't he? Of course, with a 2-year contract. So again, Alpine have no reason to change that lineup. I think he's been really strong. I am really surprised by Alonso. I thought he'd come in and have the same sort of attitude as he did with McLaren, where, I mean, he parked a car up, for God's sake, didn't he, with nothing wrong in it in the McLaren days. I know the car was crap and you weren't racing in points, but that's not how you race, is it? So it did really frustrate me looking back on those seasons. I did highly recommend him, and I thought he was doing a great job for the team. But as it turns out, you look back from a perspective of later life and you get to hear the stories and situations, that it was quite a toxic environment with Alonso in that McLaren squad. And when I heard he was coming back to Formula 1, I was like, oh, I don't really want him. Don't really want him there. But he's done a fantastic job, and he's surprised me. So fair play for Alonso for that. I think he's maybe realised he didn't want to go out of the championship when he does eventually retire, that he didn't want to go out being known as this guy that had the toxic environment, and he's done a great job so far. So yeah, another unchanged driver lineup at Alpine. And then we come to AlphaTauri. A lot of people saying it could be a new lineup completely at AlphaTauri if Gasly went up to Red Bull, which he won't in my personal opinion. And of course Tsunoda not really delivering the goods in the last few races. Okay, he's picked up a couple of points here and there, but that was mainly due to luck, and his pace overall still wasn't quite there, was it? But I think, and this is probably going to be my most ballsy one, I think that's going to remain unchanged. I really do, because again, I think Red Bull are realising as a whole team, as a whole unit, that continuity is key. Gasly is doing a fantastic job at AlphaTauri. If they can keep him sweet there, there's no need for Gasly to move. Gasly at the minute doesn't really have any options to move up the grid, as far as I can see anyway. I think he'd want to wait out for McLaren. So if Ricciardo doesn't start delivering in 2022 and doing a really good job then, halfway through the midway point this time next season, we could be seeing a switch where Gasly breaks his Red Bull contract and goes to McLaren in place of Ricciardo. Ricciardo potentially out of the sport, who knows? Early days yet, but I think that's where Gasly's sights are set. I think it is set on McLaren, where they're really, really progressing. Progress every year for the last 5 years, which has been fantastic to see. And as for Yuki Tsunoda, a rookie, but again, they've not been given the rookies time, have they? They've not been giving him a chance. Albon, less than a season in AlphaTauri, jumped up to the big gun. Too soon, out of the sport at the minute, currently racing around in DTM. You've got Gasly, he jumped up, didn't he, after just 1 season in AlphaTauri Toro Rosso, you know what I mean. And then a couple of races in the 2017 season, didn't he? So he had a couple of races at the end of 2017, a full season of 2018, chucked into the Red Bull car, which was a difficult car to drive in 2019, and dropped before that season even ended. So that I think they're realising they need continuity now. They need to get the drivers up to speed. There is a lot of young guns, though, waiting in the wings for that second AlphaTauri seat, should it arise, such as Yuri Vips especially. He's been doing fantastic, hasn't he? Liam Lawson, another one to mention. So they have got options, but I think they need to keep the continuity there, and they need to give Tsunoda another full season. He's not done a bad job, he's just not been as good as everyone was expecting. He's slightly under-delivered on my expectations of him, but then when you realise he's only done one season of F2 and then come into this, it does make you wonder, yeah, another season in F2 would have been better. Of course it would have been, but at the time you see him as this young superstar coming through, a young Japanese driver with a Honda engine in the back of him. It was great for sponsorship, PR, etc. and advertisement, so that's why he leapt up. But again, could have just been a season too soon. However, I think it will remain unchanged. Gasly and Yuki Tsunoda for next season. I think they've both done well. We know Gasly's a superstar, he's done incredible, and Yuki struggled, really struggled this season. He had the Bahrain, which was cracking, a really rough few races. I mean, more than a few really, probably half a dozen, even 7, 8 bad races, but picking up the points slowly now in these latter half of the stages. Go away, reset yourself in the summer break. I think we'll see maybe a revitalised Yuki for the second half of the season. I'm not expecting him to be up there with Gasly like I was at the start of this season, but if he can get closer, we've got progress. But yeah, I do feel an unchanged lineup at AlphaTauri, Gasly and Tsunoda for 2022. And then we come to Aston Martin. Again, another unchanged driver lineup. I think it's going to be Vettel and Stroll in there. And it's quite simply because Stroll's daddy's money at the end of the day. Daddy's money. And he's not done that bad of a job, has he? Let's be honest, he's not done that bad of a job. Mugello last year, when he had that tyre failure, he really struggled from then on. And that was a big accident that wasn't his fault. And I think it's took him the winter off period to get his head reset, and he's come back and he's done all right. He's done all right. I think the Aston Martin's a car that's not as good as everyone expected it to be. I certainly expected it to be a lot better, and I thought it'd be the drivers that'd be letting the car down. But in the grand scheme of things, and the way that Vettel and Stroll have been driving it this season, it has been the car that's been letting the drivers down. Yes, we saw Stroll make that silly error at Hungary, but it had to happen because I was singing Stroll's praises for the first 10 races pretty much. You know, he's had an off race or two, but he's not done anything drastic to warrant me absolutely slating him until Hungary. And I think we're still going to see traits like that from Stroll because that's his characteristics, that's his mannerisms. If he has an off day, he has a really off day and does a lot of damage and causes a lot of chaos. So overall though, he has been really, really good. And as for Sebastian Vettel, he's been there to pick up the pieces when it's all gone wrong. Baku, of course, and Hungary. I know he got disqualified and I know they're not appealing the appeal and the you know, I get that. But to me, it was a P2 finish, that, and it always will remain P2 in a lot of people's hearts, not just mine. He's done a fabulous job for the team. I thought he'd struggle. We saw him at Bahrain, clattering into the back of Ocon, out the points, and you think, God, he's not learned, has he? He's not learned. And I thought he were on for a difficult season. He'd leave at the end of the season, and that'd be that. But he's proved me wrong massively. He's done a cracking job, a great effort, and yeah, that lineup will remain unchanged. Vettel's done a cracking job. Stroll's not done a bad job, and Daddy's money will keep him there. So yeah, unchanged lineup at Aston Martin. And then we come to Williams, an interesting story here, potentially developing. Who knows? Who knows? But the investors, of course, of the Williams team, since buying out from last season from, of course, the Williams family, have said they no longer need a pay driver to get where they need to get to. They don't need that driver money to survive. So could that mean potentially Latifi out of a seat? Who knows? Personally speaking, I think he'll stay. I think he's going to stay. I think there is a lot of worthy drivers that need to get onto the grid and should be on the grid. But I think he'll stay because he's just solid. You know, he's made a couple of silly mistakes this season, admittedly. Imola, where he cut across Marzi's spin after having the spin at, of course, lap 1. So he spun, rejoined the circuit, doing 40 mile an hour, just cut in front of Marzi's spin and did a lot of damage there. And he's seen silly error spins, but he is just solid, isn't he? He's just consistent. He's never going to bring anything special home, of course, Hungary being a one-off. Yeah, he's not going to do anything spectacular, but he's just there, Mr. Consistency. You know he's probably going to be out in Q1, but he doesn't really do anything that reckless, that often. And when he does, you can kind of forgive him for it. So, the money aspect, I know they say they don't want it, but I think Latifi is a safe pair of hands considering the amount of money he brings. I think it's a lot better than sticking a rookie in with no money and then he's just going to bin it every season or every session. I think, personally speaking, they're going to look at Nick Latifi as a safe pair of hands. He's bringing in plenty of cash. He can bin it every now and again, and yeah, it's probably going to cost him championship points, but there you go, that's life. And they've got to get themselves up the order first. So I know they say they don't need money, but the more money they've got, the more they can develop. Yes, we've got the budget caps, etc. I totally understand that. But if you can't reach the budget cap just yet, then keep Latifi in place. Get that money rolling in. You know, safe pair of hands. He's going to crash every now and again. When he does, okay, he'll probably pay for the bill anyway. And it might be better than sticking in 2 rookies next season if George does go up to Mercedes, which I think he will. Because 2 rookies, as we've seen with Marzi Spin and Schumacher, can cause a lot of damage. And if it's a little difficult to drive the car, then you could be seeing more spins and more crashes, whereas Latifi might be able to save those just based on his experience of being driving a difficult car for a number of years. So that's why I think Latifi will stay. Alongside him, I think it's got to be Nick de Vries, hasn't it? It's got to be Nick de Vries. Mercedes are announcing at the end of 2022 season of Formula E, they will be pulling out of the sport. So where does that leave Nick? If Nick does another season in Formula E for 2022, doesn't retain the title, Mercedes pull out, where does he go? Back to GTs or something? He's a talent. He's an F2 champion. He's now a Formula E champion. I know that doesn't mean anything to a lot of people, but he's delivered again in a totally different environment, a different sport. I think they're going to see Nick de Vries as a credible young rookie with a fantastic background and reputation. Get him alongside, make him the new George Russell of the Williams team, push that team forward. It can gain experience for a season, do really, really well. Latifi's there just for the Mr. Solid Man, just in case Nick de Vries bins everything all the time. You've got Mr. Consistency there, although he's not quick. And I think that's the best way to do it. I think de Vries will be a safe pair of hands, a good rookie, alongside Nick Latifi. Not the dream lineup that everyone wanted, but I think it's there and it's solid. And I think that is where they're going to go. I think Williams are going to keep Latifi, safe pair of hands into the new regulation, and Nick de Vries, the rookie that's going to replace Russell to be the next star of the future. And then we come to Alfa Romeo, and possibly, maybe the most controversial perhaps in terms of driver lineup, but both drivers will be gone at the end of the season. Antonio Giovinazzi and Kimi Raikkonen. Kimi Raikkonen will announce his retirement fairly soon, I'm sure. Fair play to him for that if he does, because at the end of the day, he's just been enjoying himself for the last few years since leaving Ferrari. No expectations on his shoulders apart from just finish the races. And the team seems to be struggling at the moment in terms of reliability, or the drivers making errors when points are on offer, pit stop dramas, general just infringement of the rules, which is netting them penalties. So for Raikkonen, it would be the right time to leave at the end of this season. Will he get a contract extension if he did want to go? Possibly not, because I think they've got to look for the rookies of the future now. And Antonio Giovinazzi, he did a cracking job at the start of the season, which is, he always seems to end a season really well, which keeps him in for the next season. And we always say, start off well, Antonio. He started off well and faded away this time, which is probably worse. So yeah, I think he's going to be an all-new driver lineup at Alfa Romeo next season, and I can definitely see it being Valtteri Bottas at Alfa Romeo. I think he's going to do pretty much what Raikkonen did, from the top to the bottom, overnight pretty much, but keeps his foot in Formula 1 just in case anyone needs a pair of hands later on, a safe pair of hands to step in at any point during the season. He'll keep his options open while he's at Alfa Romeo, and I think alongside him will be the young Callum Ilott, one of my superstars. I honestly believe he deserved Formula 1 this season, but he's doing a lot of testing for Ferrari off camera, so to speak. You know, a lot of behind the scenes sim running and classic in the older spec Ferraris, etc. So I think they're gearing him up for a Formula 1 debut next season. So that's my personal opinion. You've got Valtteri Bottas there, a lot of experience, is able to help the team push forward into the new regulations next season. And you've got Callum Ilott, a new rookie, which will do a cracking job. I think he'll be solid. I think he'll be like a Nick de Vries, you know, learn the ropes the first few races, get up to speed and be very good. Do I think Callum's as good as Nick? Possibly not, but I think they're going to be really closely matched in the first season, and depending on how the season goes, you never know. You just never know, and the opportunities that arise, there's plenty of options for them. So yeah, I do honestly believe that that is the lineup for Alfa Romeo next season: Valtteri Bottas and Callum Ilott. And then we come to the last team on the grid, and of course, it's got to be remaining unchanged. It's got to be Nikita Mazepin and, of course, Mick Schumacher. An unchanged lineup, has developing this season really much for next season. So the car's not being developed, but they're just trying to get the drivers to get to grips with quite a rough handling car and just up to speed. Of course, we know that the car's draped in Russian flag, so if Mazepin's not there next season, I will be incredibly surprised. But maybe he might do something wrong off camera and away from behind the scenes that puts him in jail. Who knows? But if that were to happen, I can't predict that. But if he does keep behaving himself on and off track, Mazepin will remain in the sport for 2022. As much as we all don't want to see it, it's a fact of life. Has to need the money. He'll be there, and I think 2023 is when the buyout will happen, when it will become officially Daddy Spin Racing. But we'll wait and see. And as, of course, for Mick Schumacher, again, he's done a cracking job this season. Had a couple too many shunts for my liking personally, especially for Gunter Steiner's standards anyway. He's certainly struggled, hasn't he, in that sense. A lot of free practice crashes, especially for Mick, especially FP3 shunts, which means he can't get out for qualifying, or such as we saw in France. He crashed, which meant he got through into Q2, but he couldn't take part in Q2 because he crashed. So a lot of silly accidents. If it was FP1, FP2, could maybe be forgiven a little bit more, but when you're crashing in FP3, which means you don't get the track time in qualifying and able to set a representative lap, gets a little bit difficult for the team in that sense. So yeah, you lose a lot more running, don't you? So yeah, I think it will remain an unchanged lineup. Mick's done a cracking job this season. My rookie of the year so far, which is surprising. I were expecting it to be Tsunoda, but Mick's done a cracking job. And as for Mazepin, there, got the money. Enjoy yourself. So there you go, guys and girls. That was my roundup of the F1 2022 driver lineup prediction. Let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. Can you see Bottas going to Alfa? Can you see him retiring from the sport if he doesn't remain in Mercedes? Will he remain in Mercedes? That's the big talking point, I think. Gasly, do you think he would go to Red Bull again? Will Helmut allow him to admit that he was wrong and that he put him up too soon last time around? I don't think so. As always, like I say, let me know your thoughts and feedback down below. I look forward to replying all the comments that I get. And thanks for watching, guys. And as always, much love.